Hey everybody, welcome in. Another rocky day out there in the markets, but this is a story about Microstrategy and the $500 million they want to issue in new stock to raise money to buy Bitcoin. What it means for you, shareholder investors, Bitcoin. Does it make sense to buy? What it means for Bitcoin price, a whole bunch of simulations, etc. And also we'll go into depth as to why companies issue stock and if it makes sense. So let's jump in. This is probably the most comprehensive video of its kind out there. So, but shout out as well to Michael Saylor. I know he is licking his chops right now looking at the Bitcoin price under 20K, which would do good things for his average price as well. We'll talk more about that too, how much they hold, average cost, the impact of this purchase. So much stuff to go through. So thank you all for being here. And this will be a bit of accounting stuff in here too, but it's got to do it. You got to do the work if you want to invest. So first of all, as I mentioned, the story is how they're going to distribute $500 million, funnel it straight into Bitcoin. That was always his plan. That's why I became executive chairman instead of CEO, so we could focus on doing this. We knew this was coming. Now, a little bit about why we believe kind of MicroStrategy is better than a spot ETF could ever be is because, thank you, Jabba, shout out to you, and Michael Saylor, two guys in the same breath. So what I call financial jiu-jitsu. First of all, MicroStrategy uses free cash flow to buy Bitcoin. MicroStrategy can issue stock to buy Bitcoin. Boom, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. MicroStrategy can issue convertible debt to buy Bitcoin. MicroStrategy can borrow against their Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin. It's like all of the different things. This is the type of stuff that a spot ETF cannot do. Now, let's go back to the big issue. Why does a company issue more shares? First of all, to raise money for expansion, buying out a competitor, develop a new product, build a new factory, or buy more Bitcoin. And as we know, when it comes to Bitcoin treasuries, nobody does more than MicroStrategy. In fact, they own 88% of all the publicly traded Bitcoin treasuries on Earth, which is huge. So the big question is for you all out there, what happens when shares are sold? Often, when an amount like $500 million of stock is dumped on the market, it takes time to sell it. You can't just do it all at once or else it would crash the price of the shares. So I do believe it will bring about a little bit of a dip in price to absorb the shares. And I got prepared for that in a position last Friday. The timing was pretty good because I didn't even know that this stock dilution was going to happen. But anyway, but remember as well, the value you own of the market cap gets diluted. And let's explain a simple analogy so you can wrap your heads around that. So imagine you're having a party and you've invited 10 people to a pizza party and you plan to cut that pizza into 10 slices. And one slice is enough to feed one person. But all of a sudden, 2 more show up and they were not invited, not freaking invited. They show up, but there's only one pizza. So what do you have to do? You got to cut that pizza into 12 pieces instead of 10 pieces. That is a stock dilution analogy, and we'll go through more detailed numbers for MicroStrategy right now. So the notification that came out late Friday was here. They plan to sell up to $500 million of Class A common stock. But the little piece I've underlined there is the sales agreement. The person doing it, Cohen, will be taking 2% of the proceeds. So that'll knock $10 million off the actual proceeds itself. Or, yeah, $10 million. And I took that into account in my calculations too. So let's jump into where we are with the shares today. So first of all, the amount of shares outstanding before dilution is 11.3 million shares out there. And what happens next is very important. But first of all, let's look at the balance sheet. This is before issuance, the balance sheet today. The amount of short-term assets in blue, short-term liabilities in red, and long-term assets in blue and long-term liabilities in red. You can see here, technically, the company owes more than it has in terms of assets. And that is important. And we're going to look at this again in a second as we go forward. Let's also talk about the HODL evolution for MicroStrategy, what they have done to date, all the purchases and how much they have. They started in Q3 2020. That's when I started trading the stock, and all the way up to Q2 2022, where they got a little bit more debt and bought a little bit more Bitcoin. They currently, today, before this share issuance and Bitcoin purchase, own 129,699 Bitcoin, which is a big stack. So let's go a little bit further. The Bitcoin holdings to date, the average cost basis is $30,664 for that 129,699 Bitcoin. They spent $3.977, call it $4 billion. And the value today is $2.6 billion. So they are in the hole by about $1.35 billion. So the timing has not been perfect. And therefore, I think Michael Saylor has kind of sees this as an arms race to take advantage of these very low prices. Again, we were at prices where Bitcoin was basically 5 years ago. Now, let's look at the balance sheet after they issue $500 million in stock. So here you see I increased the value of the long-term assets. That's what happens. You issue stock. Yes, the shareholders are diluted, but it is additive to the value of the business. Now, I assume the proceeds, all of them, the $490 million, will go towards buying Bitcoin, and that will become a long-term asset on the balance sheet as we go forward. So let's talk about some more numbers. So the Bitcoin possible purchase with share issuance. So I believe with this amount of capital, the $490 million, at today's prices, and remember, when they go in and buy $500 million worth of Bitcoin, it's going to drive the price up. So I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to be able to get it at, but right now Bitcoin is just under 20,000. So it's changed since the slide was put together 20 minutes, half an hour ago. So the total Bitcoin purchase, 23,333. I didn't make that up. That's just by chance. That is the price of 21,000 or 20,200 by 490. Now that'll increase their total Bitcoin number of Bitcoin that they have to 153,000 Bitcoin. And the value of this bag at today's prices will be over 3 billion. And the number of Bitcoin per share will be 0.011. That'll come into play later. Let's talk about the share count. This is the dilution part. So today they got 11.3 million shares outstanding. Stock issued less 2% fee is 490 million. The shares sold, assuming they can get $225 per share, will be 2.177 million. That shouldn't be a dollar sign in front of that. Sorry about that. And the total new outstanding share count will be 13.477 million shares. Now, if what I always assume is the value of MicroStrategy before Bitcoin, ripping Bitcoin off, is worth at least $1 billion, sometimes 1.2 billion. And that equates to about $74 a share with that total of, say, 13.4 million shares outstanding. Sorry about all the numbers today, but this is a numbers channel. This is what this means for stock dilution. I believe it'll be approximately 18%. I can't say if it's 17.5 or 18.5 because I don't know what the price of Bitcoin is going to be, and I don't know how much they're going to be able to sell the shares for. All of these things are interrelated, but we will find out pretty soon. Now, what I estimate the MicroStrategy HODL bag to look like after the stock issuance, the number of Bitcoin today is 129,699. They have 14,589 of those within MicroStrategy, and the rest under Macrostrategy, which is a special holding unit for these Bitcoin. I do believe that bag will increase to 153,032 Bitcoin as they go forward, which is a pretty big increase, especially when you look at the price. Their average price is about 30,600 today. So a quick summary of the issuance. MicroStrategy, we assume it's worth $1 billion. It was originally worth about 1.2 billion before they started buying Bitcoin, but I ratcheted it down to be conservative. The total outstanding shares we have about 13.477 million after dilution, and the total Bitcoin after dilution is 153,032, and the total debt remains about 2.4 billion. Now, the fun part, let's play some scenarios as to what this will all mean with these new numbers for the actual stock price based on different Bitcoin prices. So we have an arbitrage model, and here, these are theoretical prices. This is a theoretical model, and there is no absolute correlation with Bitcoin for the MicroStrategy stock. And that's why I trade the hell out of this asset. It's very fun to trade. But let's look at a couple of numbers here. So first of all, the price at the time of this slide, literally 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago, is 20,152 per Bitcoin, assuming they own 153,032 Bitcoin. And the market cap today is 2.114 trillion. You can see here the Bitcoin value will be over 3 billion. The net cap is 1 billion. Therefore, the total enterprise value should be worth about 4.083 billion per my calculations. You divide that by the number of shares. The new amount of shares is 13.477 million shares. And that will give you an approximate price. Theoretical MicroStrategy floor price would be $303. Again, if you rip out the debt, it becomes a little bit of a different scenario. And the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin market cap still isn't plugged in because this model runs off real-time data. So it's pulling in the market cap today out there. And that hasn't reflected yet the issuance of the new shares. But in summary, the most important thing is to buy one Bitcoin. You need about 88 shares, which will cost you about 19,000. So it still is kind of selling at a discount. Now, net, the most important thing is if, hypothetically, if Bitcoin goes to $100,000, MicroStrategy's shares will be worth well above $1,200 a share. And that's a 5.5x from here. So you can outperform Bitcoin by buying MicroStrategy shares by 10% or so based on this model only. So let's talk about one other thing that I know is on people's minds. It's like, well, isn't all the Bitcoin pledged? No. Only, here you can see the MicroStrategy pledged in red, about 14,500 Bitcoin. The MicroStrategy pledged is 30,000 and 85,000 are unencumbered. And once they add the other 25,000 or 30,000 Bitcoin, however many they add, that will also be unencumbered, unpledged as well, and can be used in case something really, really bad happens out there in the marketplace. Now, some perspective on Bitcoin, on how early we are. The Bitcoin market cap is about 350 million, call it 0.4, and 350 million. And digital assets in total are worth 1.1 trillion. Silver mined, 1.1 trillion, very similar to all digital assets. Gold market cap is of over 11 trillion. S&P 500 market cap, 36 trillion. Global equities, over 110 trillion. Global debt, 300 trillion. Remember, we always talk about debt and everything's built on debt. Well, check that out. And global real estate, 325 trillion. The amount of global real estate on Earth is almost equivalent to the global debt. That is itself a fascinating statistic. Now, let's talk about some of the analyst price predictions. In fact, Cathie Wood believes Bitcoin could exceed, not hit, but exceed $1 million by 2030. And Fidelity believe if the adoption continues in this trajectory, one Bitcoin could be worth $1 billion by 2038. That's why I say, everybody, stay healthy out there. Now, what would happen to the MicroStrategy price if Cathie Woods is right and say we just hit $1 million? What would that price be? Well, I did the calculations. The stock price would be, if they assume they did not buy any more Bitcoin and refinance their existing debt, would be about at least $11,429 a share, which is a big jump from where we are today. So enough numbers, everybody. Maybe there's more. Let's talk about a couple more. So first of all, if this happens, they issue the stock, $500 million of stock, and buy the Bitcoin, they will have over 1% of all Bitcoin, because I believe only 14 million Bitcoin will ever exist because so many are lost and the Satoshi lockup, and they will be 10,000 Bitcoin over what I call owning 1% of all Bitcoin available. Now, per Michael Saylor, why does he believe MicroStrategy is better than a spot ETF? He said, if there was a spot ETF, you'd be paying a 1% fee and it wouldn't be leveraged. With MicroStrategy, we have a software company that generates cash flow, converted to our cash flows into Bitcoin. And MicroStrategy is de facto Bitcoin spot ETF that generates a 4 to 5% tax deferred yield. That is the power of this actual stock. And what he also says is if you want 2% exposure to Bitcoin, buy MicroStrategy. Have that as part of your portfolio. Not selling MicroStrategy stock here or anything, just quoting Michael Saylor himself. But remember, there's always risk. They do have debt. We showed the balance sheet at the very, very beginning. And as I always say, the pure form in self-custody is always the safest. But this is also an awesome asset to trade. So many of you asked for this. The meaning of this issuance, the dilution, impact on stock, yes, it'll be good. But once Bitcoin goes back, and if it goes back above, I believe the break-even price would be about 28,500, then 29,000 per Bitcoin. Once that happens, then MicroStrategy will be profitable again. They will not be underwater on their Bitcoin holdings. And then you can expect great things to happen to the stock price. So we'll see. Fingers crossed we get out of this crypto winter and go risk on again. We'll see. Some assets are already going risk on today, despite the weakness in the market. Let's not talk about Tesla. That's for another topic. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the people in the audience. Thank you to the moderators. I wish you all a very happy Wednesday. See you all tomorrow. Bye.